वैष्णव जन तो तेरे कहिए पीर पराई जाने रे पर दुखे उपकार करे जोए पर दुखे उपकार करे जोए मन अभिमान ना आन रे वैष्णव जन तो तेरे कहिए। So last week, as I'm sure you know, was the birth anniversary of Gandhi ji, 150th year of his birth. I was fortunate to be invited to take part in the inauguration of the 150th birth anniversary celebrations of Gandhi ji at Rajghat. It was a very beautiful event with lots of children of India, which I particularly appreciated, children who came from all states of India to be part of this launch. Children were very special to Gandhi ji. They loved him and he loved them. And one of his great-grandsons was also there. So he gave a very special presence to this event. So this morning, I wanted to share with you my own reflection on one of his favorite songs, to give a theological reflection on this song that is one of the songs I think known by every Hindu in every part of our world. It is one of the earliest songs in my own memory. I can't say when I first heard it, but it was a song that seems to be with me from a very young age, and I distinctly remember my own grandfather singing this song when he read Hindu religious texts at gatherings. So I think it's a song that has gone very deep into the hearts of all of us and moves us. The song is not Vaishnava Janato, although I sang that. It's Raghupati Raghava, Raja Ram, Patita Pavana, Sita Ram. It became one of his favorite songs, and so I was been thinking about why this song was so special to him and why it has gone so deep into our own hearts. Gandhiji, as many of you might know, was a devotee of goddess Sri Ram. Sri Ram was his favorite, his Ishtadeva, as we say, or his favorite form of God. And he tells in his autobiography, My Experiments with Truth, how he came to discover, to develop this great love and sense of closeness to Ram. As a child, he wrote he was terrified of ghosts and spirits, and very much afraid of the dark, like many of us probably did when we were children, or our own children do. But his babysitter, was an elderly woman, suggested that he could deal with this fear by repeating the name of Ram whenever he felt fearful. He had a lot of faith in his babysitter, so he took her advice very seriously. And this childhood practice of repeating the name of Ram, which of course we know now as Japa, was his earliest religious practice and remained with him throughout his life. Later on, he was introduced to the Ramayana as a text, and this happened when his father was on his deathbed. And the family would gather every evening for the singing of, in this case, the Tulsi Ramayana, Ramcharit Manas. And he listened to the reading and the exposition of the text by one of the great devotees of Ram who came to his home. So he described himself in his autobiography as being enraptured when he heard Ramcharitmanas for the first time. And he regarded it as one of the greatest works, one of the greatest devotional works in the history of spiritual literature. So this name of God, Ram, moved him, always moved him very, very deeply. He said that the English word God is beautiful, but it doesn't really go to his heart. He found it to be too impersonal, too abstract. But Ram, when he spoke the word Ram or he sang the name Ram, his heart was moved. He wrote on one occasion about this, and he compared what Ram meant to him by giving the example of Sri Hanumanji. These are his words. He says, Hanuman tore open his heart and showed that there was nothing there but Ram Nam, the name of Ram. I have none of the power of Hanuman to tear open my heart. But if any of you feel inclined to do it, I assure you that you will find nothing there but love of Ram, for whom I see in the face of the starving millions of India. End of quote. This is a very revealing quotation from Gandhiji, because as you know, if you've read his life, you know when he was assassinated and bullet entered his chest, his last words were, Hey Ram. And this is inscribed in Rajghat, where he is cremated. So when he sought a description for the India of his dreams, it does not surprise us that he also turned to Ramcharitmanas, and he spoke of it as Ram Rajya. He was very careful when he used the expression Ram Rajya, or the rule of Ram, to describe the India of his dreams. He said, I'm not speaking about a Hindu kingdom or a Hindu nation. Ram Rajya, he said, for me, means a place where there is justice, people don't suffer because of oppression, because of lack of basic necessities of life. It was what he imagined as an ideal human society inspired by Tulsidas's description. So with all of this as background, it doesn't surprise us that his favorite song was one that was dedicated to Sri Ram, Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram. As far as the composition of this song is concerned, it's hard to say, but the bit of research that I have done on it suggests that it is a composition of the Hindustani musician Vishnu Paluskar, who was a contemporary of Gandhi. He died in 1931. But many scholars of music history in India, this is a name that keeps coming up in the context of Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram. He sang this song in Gandhiji's presence, and it captivated him. And this was a song that was sung every evening when he had his satsangs. The song, why we associate Raghupati Raghava also with death ritual, or when someone dies, is because this was a song that was sung along the journey when he was cremated to Rajghat. And so it's also become associated with passing and death. It grew in popularity in 1930 when it was sung by him and his followers along that 250-mile march, almost 250-mile march from his ashram in Sabarmati to Dundee, the Great Salt March. The song that they sang along the way was Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram. So it became also a song of protest, a song of resistance to colonial rule, to British injustice. The Salt March was one of the very important organize acts of protest against British colonial rule. It was an act of defiance because of the tax that was imposed on salt. And I'm sure you remember his arrival at the sea and his lifting up of the salt from the ocean, which then inspired mass civil disobedience across India. The song in its structure is very simple. Some verses have been added later on by others, but the original structure of this song is very simple. It has a chorus and 2 verses. So the chorus, we all know, Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. That's the basic chorus. And it begins with some of the important or favorite names of Sri Ram, Raghupati, the Lord of the Raghus, Raghava, one who belongs to the Raghu family. But I think the key words in the chorus that were very important to Gandhi was the expression Patita Pavana. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana. That's very important. That's where the religious significance of the chorus lies. Patita Pavana means, the strength of the weak, or the fallen, the trampled, the strength for those who are weak, those who are fallen, those who are trampled. Sri Ram is Patita Pavana, the inspiration, the hope, the strength, the support, the one who lifts those who are fallen. And this had significance for Gandhiji for many reasons. That God, Sri Ram, would be described as Patita Pavana. We have to see it in his context also, in his historical context. Why it was so important for him that God be described with these words. These words become an important definition of the nature of the divine, Patita Pavana. Because he was, in one sense, he was dealing with a nation that had fallen under colonial rule. India itself was Patita. All of its resources were being drained. Had no control over its own destiny. It existed to satisfy the economic interests of imperial England. So the whole nation was dominated by an external power and was in this fallen state. But for him also, there were internal. So you had an external power that was oppressive. But as you know, Gandhi was also very much concerned about the internal condition of his nation, the oppression of Indians upon each other. He spent his lifetime campaigning against untouchability. And so for him, God was the source of his inspiration, his hope, his strength, Patita Pavana. In a sense, he felt that God was on the side of the oppressed. God was on the side of the fallen. God was on the side of those who suffered injustice. So it was very important for him, that characterization of the divine, that God is not neutral. Where people are oppressed, where people suffer, the divine is not indifferent. The divine is not neutral. The divine is with those who suffer. And I think the second point about Patita Pavana is that for him, if this is the nature of the divine, if Sri Ram himself is Patita Pavana, he's concerned, he's the support, he's the hope of those who are oppressed, Gandhi felt deeply that this is what he must also become. He must also be a Patita Pavana. He must also be a source of inspiration, a source of support, a source of hope for those who are oppressed. Because as he wrote so many times, in so many different ways, that in what I read earlier on, that since Sri Ram existed in all beings, The only way to find Sri Ram was to see Sri Ram in all beings. And how do you do that? Is by identifying with others, by loving them, by serving them. This is how one also becomes a Patita Pavana. So God is Patita Pavana, and for him, he sought to become a Patita Pavana for others. This is how he felt he could embody and express the divine in his life. So that was the name. If you asked him past what was the most important names for God, he would have said Satya, but he would also say, Patita Pavana, the support of the fallen, the hope of the hopeless, and so on. So then we have the movement from this first two lines, Laghupati Raghava Raja Ram, Patita Pavana Sitaram. Ishvara Allah Tero Naam, Sabako Sanmati De Bhagavan. The first verse. Ishvara Allah Tero Naam, Sabako Sanmati De Bhagavan. Very interesting, as you reflect on this song, the movement of the verses is very, very, very interesting, very insightful. So, in the chorus is a very specific naming of God, Raghupati, Raghava. It centers. The chorus centers very much on his Ishtadeva, Sri Ram. But from this very particular and specific naming of God as Sri Ram, the first verse moves by adding two more names of God. See, so from Raghupati Raghava, Ishvara Allah, Tero Naam. Why? Why that movement? So Ishvara, like, Bhagavan, Ishvara comes from the Hindu tradition, of course. It's Sanskrit. Allah comes from Islam. Ishvara is a very general name for the divine in the Hindu tradition. It is not as specific as Krishna or Rama or Durga or Shiva. It is the one who rules, Ishvara. The divine ruler, the one who rules. So it's a very broad and very general name for God in the Hindu tradition. So he moves from the chorus to a very broad conception of the divine by the employment of the word Ishvara. Ishvara. Why? It doesn't happen very much in our modern times, but there were historical episodes in the past when even within the Hindu tradition, people argued about the superiority of one form of God over the other. We have historical records of Vaishnavas and Shaivas contending with each other about which name of God is superior. Even today there are some traditions within the Hindu world which will say that, this form of God is superior to all others, and all other forms of God are demigods or inferior. It's becoming rare, thankfully, but it still exists in some forms there. There are traditions that still profess such claims. So Gandhi, this Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, by employing the word Ishvara, Ram is Ishvara. Ram is a specific form of God, but Ram is the divine. So he moves from a specific to a more universal name for God. There is a quite remarkable moment in the Tulsidas Ramayana. This occurs when Ram goes to Rameshwaram. And there he, according to the tradition, he worships Lord Shiva you worship the Shiva Linga. And Tulsidas has him say, Shankara Bhajana Bina Nara Bhagati na Pavai Mori. Shankara Bhajana Bina Nara Bhagati na Pavai Mori. So then Ram says to all within hearing that I'm going to say something to you, that without love for Shiva, Shankara Bhajana Bina, without the love for Shiva, no one can develop love for me. You will not love me unless you love Shiva. Now think of that in a contempt. That's an extraordinary statement. It's just there in Tulsidas. There are many ways of reading that. You can read that in the context where there was rivalry between Vaishnavas and Shaivas. Those who worship God as Vishnu. Because Ram, after all, is in our tradition, he's an avatar of Vishnu. So here he comes and he says, but if you don't worship or don't love God as Shiva, you're not going to love me. Now just think of that, putting it in a contemporary context. Suppose a Christian says, if you don't love God as Krishna, you will not love God as Christ. Or if you don't love God as Allah, you will not love God as Ram. So Ram says, if you don't love God as Shiva, you can't love me. It's very interesting. In other words, you don't really know God, if we can perhaps read into it. You don't really know God truly unless you also recognize the multiplicity of names under which this one can be worshipped. In other words, if you hold on to one name alone as true and all other names as false, you don't really know God. You're missing something. If you Gandhi, let's not misunderstand, Gandhi had a very preferred name for God, which was Ram. But it doesn't mean that if I have a preferred name for God, all other names are wrong. All other names should be marginalized, should be ostracized, and those who use other names should somehow be inferior or condemned. So Ram's statement, Shankara Bhajana Binanara Bhagati na Pavai Mori, is an extraordinary theological statement in the 15th century from Tulsidas. So if Ishvara, Allah, Tero Naam, if Ishvara represents all of the names for God within the Hindu tradition, Allah, of course, is Arabic, the God, represents, the divine in Islam, but we can extend it to all other traditions. It is used here because Muslims constitute the largest minority religious group in India after the Hindus. So why was it necessary to go beyond the boundaries of the Hindu tradition and include the name of God from another tradition, in this case from Islam? In other words, so I can appreciate, let us say, as a Hindu, I can appreciate the names of gods such as Shiva or Vishnu or Durga or Lakshmi and Ganesha refer to one and the same being. Right? I can appreciate that. I may think, however, that any name that is outside of the Hindu tradition is false. And that would be problematic. That would be problematic. And if I did that, how would I think about it? There are many possibilities. I may think that, well, my God alone is true and other gods are false. All other gods are false. Many people have thought that about Hinduism. Right. I may say that, Ram is the only God that exists. Any other name, any other form, any other way of speaking about God is wrong and false and untrue. Or I may say, well, yeah, maybe this other God exists, but my God alone is right. I could say the God is false in the sense that the God is non-existent. or the God exists but is inferior, or false and untrue. Then if I admit the existence of many other gods and I consider my God alone to be true, I end up in a form of polytheism, because I'm admitting, that the world is a world of multiple deities, but one is superior and all others inferior. So, including Allah, Ishvara Allah, Tero Naam, reminds us of a vital truth, that our neighbors of other religious traditions who might call God by a name that is different from the one that we use are also relating themselves to the one God. I'm not saying, and this is important, so I should qualify, I'm not saying that everyone has the same understanding of God, about who God is. Right? Understandings differ, theologies of God differ, right? And we should learn from each other. Right? We should grow and deepen our understanding. I'm not saying that all religions are identical in what they speak about God. But the Ishvara Allah Tero Naam is an important statement that the one God can be called by many names and still be one. And still be one. That is what we suppose. Now, when we start, if we say that, if we at least initially take that step, which was taken in the Rig Veda itself. Right? In the Rig Veda itself, Ekam Sat Bahura Vipra Vadanti. Right? There's one being, Ekam Sat. Vipraha, the wise. Bahuda Vadanti, speak of in many ways. Rig Veda. If we take that step, if we are willing to take that step, opening ourselves to the possibility that the one may be spoken of in different ways, Bahuda Vadanti, the Rig Veda says, and the ones who are speaking differently are not silly. They are Vipraha. They are wise people. Ekam Sat Vipraha. Bahuda Vadanti. Even the wise might speak differently. But that step is necessary for respect for the other, for willingness to be in dialogue with the other, for willingness to be in relationship with the other. That basic theological possibility, that the one may be spoken of differently, but still be the one, is a basic requirement for dialogue with the other. If you say the other is false, then only relationship you want is either you want to convert the other. Okay, you demonize and you want to convert the other. But if you say maybe we are both relating ourselves to the one, then it's a basis for a different kind of relationship. So Ishvara Allah Tero Naam Sabako Sanmati De Bhagavan. So we may read Sanmati here as a prayer. Please bless people with this understanding, that the one can have many names. It's something that is, the Hindu tradition from very ancient times has had this insight. And the world needs this insight. Our world needs this insight more than ever today. If we give it up, not only do we lose something that is precious to who we are, we deprive the world of an important theological insight. This Ishvara Allah Tero Naam allows for different understandings of God, but it does not allow for different gods. It allows for a Hindu understanding of God, a Christian understanding of God, a Muslim understanding of God, but not many gods. And that's an important difference. So that's the first verse. Ishvara Allah Tero Naam Sabko Sanmati De Bhagavan. Verse 2. Ucha Nicha Eka Saman Sabko Sanmati De Bhagavan. So if the divine is one, as the first verse says, Ishvara Allah Tero Naam, the oneness. So in that verse we have, if you look at the structure of it, the chorus is an affirmation of the Ishtadeva. Yes, the divine is one, but we also have particular understandings that are precious to us. So Gandhi never stopped calling God Ram, right? Even though he knew Ram to be the God of all. Ram is Ishvara, Ram is God. Ishvara, Ram is the God of all, but that name was precious to him. So the chorus is an affirmation of particularity, the preciousness of particularity. It doesn't mean that because, it doesn't mean that because theologically we know that God is one, we should all be worshipping God in the same way. We should do away with our Hindu rituals and adopt some sort of universal rituals. No, these particular things are important. This morning we were observing the wonderful, worship of Varadaraja. That's precious, that's valuable, that's important that we preserve and we celebrate that particularity. But if we have particularity without universality, we lost something. If I look at the Murti of Varadaraja, and I think Varadaraja is a Hindu god. Yes. But I must also know Varadaraja is a god of all. Varadaraja is Ishvara. Varadaraja is also the God of all. My God must not be a small God. If your God is so small that it's your God alone, then it's not God. We shouldn't make God small. Varadaraja is the God of all. Ram is the Ishvara, Ram is the God of all. It's simple but very, very important, very, very profound. So, particularity, then unity of God, first verse. Ishvara Allah Tero Naam. Second verse, Ucha Nicha Eka Saman Sabko Sanmati De Bhagavan. Unity of humanity. What does this unity of God mean for us? How the second verse basically speaks about how do we see each other now? Now, if we know this truth, it should transform us. It should make a difference to us in how we live our lives in the world. And that is contained in this plan. Ucha Nicha Eka Sama. So the consequence of understanding God's oneness within and across religious traditions is the consequence is an affirmation of the equal worth and dignity of all human beings. Ucha Nicha Eka Saman is a statement that points to the equal worth and dignity of every human being. We should not read Ucha Nicha Eka Saman to be saying, well, there are people who are higher and there are people who are lower, but we should treat them all equally. It is actually questioning the categories of higher and lower themselves. But you have to sometimes describe it to question it. It's like, we say, sociologists and anthropologists who study race know that race is a social construct. Right? Race is a social construct. But racism is not. Racism is real, even though it is based on a fiction. Even though racism is based on a fiction that they are separate races, when they are not. The idea of separate races is something that was created. Right? But doesn't mean that racism is a fiction. It's real. Racism is real. So in saying Ucha Nicha Eka Saman, the Raghupati Raghava is not saying, okay, it's all right. Some could be high and some could be low as long as you treat them all equally. He said, don't see others as high as low. See others as having the same dignity and equal worth. Because, connecting it with the first verse, if we think that our God is superior to every other name of God or every other form of God, we are likely to devalue those who call God by a different name or who worship God differently. We devalue others because, in other words, we lift ourselves in ways that then devalue others. Eka Saman, we don't see them Saman. Our vision is not one of equality, saman. So, each religious tradition historically, unfortunately, has had its own derogatory terms for people of other religious traditions. Every religious tradition has that. We have had it also. We have it in our Hindu tradition also. We have words like Malich to describe those who are outside of the Hindu fold, And other traditions have their words for us. Whether it's kafirs, idolaters, all of these words devalue others. So we always have to be careful, whoever we are. This is a basic honesty. Think of ourselves. Who is the one that we are devaluing because of our religious beliefs? Who do we devalue? Who do we consider to be of lesser worth? So this was important for Gandhi. Again, in his own time, he was struggling against this devaluation of human beings. One I already spoken about. The whole nation, the Indian nation itself, was devalued by the colonial powers. Indians were considered inferior as human beings. But in the eyes of the British, an Indian was not the same. Didn't have the same dignity, didn't have the same value as an European. So that was a form of devaluation. And also, as I said, within the Hindu tradition, he was aware of the divisions of some considering themselves superior to others. So I was concerned both with an external and internal devaluation. Ucha, Nicha, Eka, Sama. That's the consequence of Ishvara Allah Tero Naam. The ethical, the human relational consequence of seeing God as the God of all. Because if God is the God of all, human beings constitute one community. They constitute a single community. Something that Gandhi himself said very explicitly. So, to conclude, this beautiful song, Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram, I feel was important to him for at least, as I described, for these 4 important reasons, all of which are very, very key Hindu ideas. First is the value for diversity and the value for particularity in the chorus. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram. We should celebrate diversity. We should celebrate particularity. He held on through all his life to his own tradition, his own favorite ways of thinking and understanding God. As he said, I want to live in a home with all the windows open so that the winds from every direction can flow through my house. But I don't want to be blown off my feet by any gust. But I want my home to be open. Particularity is important. And secondly, universality, the unity of God. So we have the particular, but we can't lose sight of the universal. If my God is only particular, then my God is not the God of all. My God is not Ishvara. If Ram is only particular, Ram is not Ishvara, the God of all. Ram is not a tribal deity. We must not make our gods into tribal gods, into tribal deities, because we are not tribes. We constitute a single human community. And thirdly, the unity of humanity, which is the second verse. If God is one, so is humanity. Ucha nicha ek saman. Sabko sanmati de Bhagavan. May all be blessed with this understanding about the unity of humanity. And I would add also for Gandhiji, the unity of life. So the celebration of diversity, the celebration of God's unity, the celebration of human unity, and the unity of life, because it drew him, the last point, unity of life, it drew him to a life of service. All of this becomes expressed in dedicated, a life that was dedicated to the service of others, a life that finds expression in active and dedicated service. So these are the thoughts that I wanted to share with you on the Rupati Ragavaraja, so we can sing and then we will conclude. Raghupati Ragavaraja Patita Pavan Sitaram, Raghupati Ragavaraja Celebration of particularity, diversity, unity of God, unity of humanity, unity of life. Raghupati Ragavaraja. Thank you. Yeah, please, Asha.
Probably I'm the only one in this Congress, probably even Minnesota, who has attended Shivyatra of Gandhiji.
Wonderful.
On 30th, it was on 31st morning. I grew up in and went to a school which was very patriotic and Hindu religion. It's Hindu Kanya Pathshala. Once a month, the people who could sing, I take that back, every morning the school, we started the prayers with Saraswati prayer and Raghupati Raghav Rajaram. And I'm proud to say I was there as long as my school days were there. I was one of the singers.
I'm so happy that you were able to share that.
Yeah, and then once a month, people in the school, the girls who were prominent for singing, would go to Birla House and partake in Gandhiji's prayers. So again, Raghupati Raghav and all those things.
Yes.
But it takes me, I still cannot forget the day of the Shav Yatra. I was in Delhi living with my Mosi, and the boy cousins, my cousin brothers, they said, I'm not going to go with you girls to the Shav Yatra. We all wanted to go. So my aunt and my cousin and I went by ourselves. And we thought, my cousin and I, we kind of conspirated that we will get lost, because if we stayed with our aunt, she will keep on saying, stay back, stay back. And we went all the way up.
Oh my goodness.
Then we marched up to Rajghat. And of course, I couldn't be very close by, but behind that, I witnessed.
Can we have a mic? We
Yes.
can hear you at the back.
Oh, you don't.
Yeah, you can use this one. Now, wonderful. Shav Yatra means a funeral procession. She was there for the funeral procession of Gandhiji to Rajghat from Birla House. Please.
I was there, it's too loud. I was there for the Shav Yatra, which is the funeral procession going, and my cousin and myself, we got away from my aunt so that we could keep on going to see it, otherwise she would keep us back. And we walked all the way to Rajghat from Delhi Gate onwards. And that scene is still there in my mind. Just because I'm that old. And so every time 31st of January we think about that, and it just comes back without any effort. And the bhajans and all those things, they are still there in my mind. The other thing which growing up in India and Delhi was when we got the independence and the Jhanda came down, the Union Jack came down, and we saw that. So those are my memories.
Thank you. I think you came here this morning only to share this. This is very nice.
I have a question.
Okay.
Patita
Pavana.
Suppose sammati, what is the word sammati mean?
Sanmati is, so mati is the intellect or the mind. So sanmati it's a compound. Sad means good or truth. So truthful mind or goodness of heart or goodness of mind. Sabako sanmati. So Devagam, God, may you bless everyone with truthful hearts or truthful minds or goodness. The word sad means both truth and good. So may all be blessed with good and truthful hearts. And I'm saying, in each line has a very specific blessing. So may you bless them with to see the truth of God's unity, and may you bless them to see the truth of human unity in each line. Yes.
Professor, one more question, please.
Please.
In today's world,
Yes.
this particular aspect of Hinduism, which is the acceptance of universality of God, is being portrayed by the Hindutva movement as the biggest weakness of Hinduism. It creates so many feelings inside of you where we think that this is our strength. And when they actually say that, just because Hinduism, this is how the Hindus feel, these fake Hindus are not believing in their own religion or quote superiority of their religion, and they make our acceptance and respect of other ways of leading to God as our weakness. They portray it like our weakness. What is your answer to people like those?
So it's a very important point that you raise, very good and contemporary question. So I will not give up this fundamental Hindu insight, because as I said, it goes back to the Rig Veda itself. We have this beautiful text of the Rig Veda, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. That the truth is one, the being is one, the wise speak differently, right? But the being is one, Ekam Sat. And then in that Rig Veda verse, the Rishi goes on to mention a lot of names. He says these are all names, but Ekam Sat. So I think that this insight must not be limited by boundaries. We have to learn to see, extend this, as I said, to other religious traditions. But at the same time, and I don't think that's what we do, that's why I was emphasizing particularity. We also don't slip into go down the slippery slope of saying, all religious traditions are identical, which they are not, right? So they have different teachings. And therefore we have to be in dialogue. We have to learn. Gandhiji himself said to the missionaries, look, you have come to India and we welcome you, but you must understand one thing. You cannot give without receiving. You cannot give without receiving. So if you come here, come with openness to receive also. We will listen to you, but you must come. And the model of shaking somebody's hands. You cannot give your hand to someone without also receiving the other person's hand. So I think that it is not at all correct theologically, and it is not faithful to the Hindu tradition to decry other religious traditions or to see this as a weakness, because this is something we can share with the world, this insight. But we don't slip also into saying that all religions are the same. Because if they're all the same, we have nothing to learn from each other. If we are so different, we can't learn anything. And if we're all saying the same thing, there is nothing to learn. But if there is a similarity, and they're all different, and differences, we can enter into respectful relationships of dialogue and mutual learning. And that's what I want to commend. So I know that many, in fact, some have gone so far with Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram to take out the word Allah. To take the word Allah out and replace it with another word. I consider that to be wrong. I will not do that. I will not sing this song except with the words of the composer, Ishwara Allah Tero Naam. The other may not see the God of Hinduism as the God of all, but I see it. And I have to be faithful to my tradition and faithful to my commitments. My commitments must not depend on what others' commitments are. I have to affirm my commitments. And Gandhi is such an, again, just to add, there is also a demonization of Gandhiji himself today. But he remained faithful. Whatever you might think about him, he remained faithful to his vision. And he was really one of we are thinking now, of late 19th, early 20th centuries, when there were very few people who talked about interreligious understanding, interreligious harmony. Very few people who would, as you were saying, Kusamji, Gandhi had his satsangs at Birla House in the evenings. Very few people who would say, come and read from the different scriptures. Give space to people of other traditions to sing. Today we take that for granted, or maybe not. But in the early part of the 20th century, here's a man who had the openness of heart, not only to give what he had to give, but to open himself to receiving and learning from others as well. We have to continue learning from him. There is a lot to learn from him. We have to continue learning from him. He remains a great teacher of our world. We don't have to agree with him on everything, but that doesn't mean that he still does not have a lot to teach our world today, which is an increasingly violent world. And his message of non-violence is needed more than ever. A long answer to your question. Please.
Etymological idea that I've heard at times, where the word Ishwar is also tied with Christianity, because Jesus has been sort of received in an affectionate way as Jesu. And Jesu has evolved into Ishu. And Ishu then becomes part of the Ishwar. And so as such then, Ishwar is inclusive in this universal conception that you share. just as Allah comes in, so does Christianity. So in a way, it just sort of broadens the...
Yeah. I mean, and you get an interesting point, but of course, you know, the word Isha or Ishvara would have predated Christianity, because we have the Isha Upanishad. The Upanishads are dated, you know, like between 200, at least 250 BC. We already had Isha Vasya. When you're going to teach right now, so the word Isha, which means the law of the road.
Partly because of that,
Yeah.
if you look at some of the fantastic space-like stories and legends that have come out, the word Ishwar
Yes.
is very much the kind of spirit,
Yes.
sort of ultimate.
Yes.
So
Issues.
in a sense, it kind of
Yeah.
Western.
It's been incorporated. Yes. Yeah. No, you're right. And Jesus is
Anyway,
called
that just a thought.
Jesus is called Ishu. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Good to have all of you here. Sorry it's getting cold, but maybe more people will come to satsang because you don't have anything else you can do on Sunday morning when it's cold. So have a wonderful day.